Hello everyone, Andy here, and here's what you can look forward to in today's episode. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Across the Pod NFL podcast. I am, as ever, your host today, Andy Davis, and we are here to review Week 1 in the NFL. And with me, I've got a returning guest. Back with me today is Colts fan JP McGrath. JP, how have you been?
I've been great, mate. It's great to have the NFL back. My life feels full again. Weekends feel full again. Sundays mean everything again. So yeah, it's felt like a long off season. So it felt kind of weird having it back. I don't know what it was like for you. But yeah, just great to have it back on our screens and looking forward to talking about some games.
Yeah, I always find that first week, I think your brain sort of gets used to that routine of not having it and then having it back, because I don't watch the season at all. It just felt, that first week always feels a bit surreal, a bit never quite, hasn't quite sunk in. I think then when the second week comes back, I think that's when we'll see, it'll feel more like it's meant to be. Do you know what I mean?
Completely agree. Like even yesterday, I kind of just forgot there was Monday Night Football on until about 9 p.m. And I was just like, oh yeah, there's a game on tonight that I can, if I don't watch the whole thing, I can at least watch like the first half of and can like catch up on in the morning. Like just weird things like that, getting back into the swing of just like the schedule. So yeah, it's great to have it back, and looking forward to what I think it's going to be a great season.
And as well, obviously you mentioned international break off camera, but next week we're going to have that great day for, if you're a UK fan who likes both types of football, you've got that day where you've got from 12 or 1 p.m. until 6:30 p.m. You've got the Premier League on Sky. And that final half an hour of the Premier League game until midnight, you've got the NFL, and you have that brief half an hour where you've got the double screen of, or maybe triple screen if you've got Game Pass, Red Zone, and then also Premier League. It's it's a really good time, really good 4 months if you're a fan of both those sports.
Yeah, my girlfriend's going to absolutely hate me by the end of it. She knows what she's getting into, but I also think at the same time she doesn't. So, but anyways, it'll be an experience.
Absolutely. Speaking of experience, let's head on to our Week 1 review. And it started off on Thursday Night Football as the Philadelphia Eagles took on the Dallas Cowboys. Of course, a game which all the Super Bowl winners get to enjoy. They open the season up at home and they get to raise their banner. Of course, the Eagles, their second Super Bowl banner. And they were announced onto the field by well-known Eagles fans and Wrexham owner Rob Mack. And they ended up winning this game just about with a 24-20 win. And I think I've never seen a start like this ever. I've never seen a start where you're literally, 6 seconds in, the kickoff return, you got a player, I forget who the player is now, a player goes down injured, and then Jalen Carter is ejected, turns out for spitting at Dak Prescott. I mean, I've never seen any NFL game in general, let alone a season opener, where the player's been ejected that early on. It was just... I think because we didn't see it happen on the original footage, on the original game footage, and the coverage, I think that was even more of a shock. The fact that you then got Jalen Carter ejected for spitting at Dak Prescott, and there's been a whole thing recently about, did Dak Prescott spit to him or was he just spitting at the floor? What was your take on that crazy part of the game?
That was just insane, and the craziest thing happened then on Saturday when I was watching college football. A Florida defender, as you might know as a Gators fan, did the exact same thing in the game against USF. So it's like London buses. But yeah, wild start to the season. I mean, those are the character concerns that came up, I guess, in Jalen Carter's eval. That's kind of why he somewhat slid a little bit. We haven't seen him yet in the NFL. I'm hoping it's just a one-off because he's such a great player. But it costs his team. He does so much in the A gaps as an early down, do-it-all defender, but especially as a run defender. And you could see it with the success that Dallas was having on the ground, and it completely benefited Dallas and impeded the Eagles. So I'm sure Fangio and the defensive coaching staff are fuming. But yeah, wild scene, and hopefully we don't see any of that stuff again.
Absolutely not. If you're a football fan of a certain age, maybe my age of 13 and above, you remember a player called El Hadj Diouf, where he did spit at, I believe, was a Celtic fan, and players as well. And there's kind of actions that I never really call for. I know a lot of people say, as someone who's never been punched in the face, people who I know have said they'd rather be punched in the face than than spat on. And I think it is just the ultimate mark of disrespect. Now, I want to believe that Dak Prescott did spit on the floor because I love as a person, I love Dak Prescott. I think he's a really great person to have in the NFL. But if I'm honest, the footage looked to me like he was spitting at Carter. But I want to give the benefit of doubt and hope that he was telling the truth and that he was, spitting at the ground. But either way, it did affect the Eagles. As you said there, a team that's already lost, a leader in Brandon Graham in the offseason. Jalen Carter, one of the best defensive players in the league, let alone on his team. And I think I got to give the Dallas Cowboys credit because I thought they were really good in this game. I think they were just a few CD Lamb dropped away from actually winning this game. And Dak Prescott, I thought, was really impressive all round. There was a part of the game where he was rallying the troops on the sidelines, and I was really impressed with his leadership during the game, Prescott, and kind of his performance after recovering from an injury. And I was really impressed with the likes of Marshall Nealand and Kenny Smith, who was, of course, part of that Micah Parsons trade. But in the end, I think the golf was there that even an Eagles team without their best player on defense still managed to get the win. And, I don't think it was vintage from certainly AJ Brown, but I think Jalen Hurts for me was really impressive on the ground. I think that was one part where Dallas Cowboys really struggled was against the run, and Hurts had 2 rushing touchdowns, had a field day in this game, and that ended up costing the Cowboys. But what was your take, JP? On that performance from both the Cowboys and also the Eagles?
Yeah, I thought you mentioned it there. I thought what I was really impressed with the Cowboys was their run defense has shown a lot of improvement. Yeah, the addition of Kenny Clark from the Green Bay Packers, who was, an excellent, early down run defender. And I think it did help limit, I think Saquon, I think he only had about 60 yards rushing. They got burnt by Jalen Hurts. And I think that was kind of the plan. You could see on the back end, there was a lot of quarters coverage from Matt Eberflus, the new Cowboys defensive coordinator. And it was about trying to contain Hurts and trying to limit the big plays downfield, but he's just too explosive of an athlete. But yeah, I think the weirdest part of the game was that like the Cowboys, the player that kind of cost the Cowboys was CD Lamb, which is wild to think because he's been one of the best receivers in the league since he came into the league, and drops, which is so uncharacteristic. Was it? I think it was 4 in the end, 4 massive drops. So yeah, I think it was kind of a weird game. But if I was Dallas, there's no moral victories, more moral defeats in the NFL. But I would kind of think about their defeat as I do about the Jets. I think they came in as a big underdog into the home of the reigning champions, and they, for the most part, I think went punch for punch with them. So I think there's definite positives to be taken on the Dallas side. For the Eagles side, defensively was definitely the main concern. I think the cornerback position was exploited by Schottenheimer. They're still trying to replace Darius Slay. Adoree Jackson was picked on. Even guys like Quinion Mitchell and Cooper DeJean, who were excellent last year, they're still second-year guys, so they're still not established, players on the back end that are going to give you a ceiling every week. So I think that would definitely concern me if I was Vic Fangio. But I think the Eagles' defense started quite sluggish last year, and he managed to turn it around. So I'm not ringing panic bells on the Eagles, but I was more impressed by the Cowboys for most of that game.
Yeah, I think overall for them, they've got a chance to get right again in week 2 with the game against the Giants. I think a lot of Cowboys fans would have probably gone to the season expecting 1-1. So I think even a team like, I don't know, like the Bills or the Ravens or the Chiefs wouldn't really could still lose to the Eagles. I think that good of a team. I think it's no shame to lose to the Eagles and to lose by just 4 points and put in a valiant performance. I think there's a lot to be positive, especially for a first-time head coach in Brian Schottenheimer. Moving on to the Friday game, just the second ever NFL game played in Brazil, and this was the Chiefs against the Chargers, and the Chargers ended up victorious, winning by 27-21. And this was a game where I want to give the Chargers credit because it is a win, and it is a little bit of a statement win against a division rival. But it's week 1 and neutral venue. I don't want to discredit the Chargers, like I said before, because I feel like the Chargers were impressive. Herbert had, 318 yards, 3 touchdowns. only 9 incomplete passes in the whole game, no interceptions. It was a really complete performance from Herbert. There was a lot of memes about him and his personal life going into this game, and maybe that's what made him play good, and that could easily be his best performance of his whole career. But is it a statement or is it a week 1 anomaly? And is it a fact it's a neutral venue? I kind of feel like if it was in America, especially Arrowhead, but even at SoFi where there's not many fans from the home team notoriously, I don't know whether they'd have won that game. I kind of feel like, yeah, what's your thought, JP? Because I'm torn whether is it a statement win or is it just a week 1 anomaly and neutral venue that caused them to win?
Yeah, first of all, I think Jim Harbaugh should definitely be slipping a coach's check to Madison Beer because ever since those rumors come out, Herbert's been incredible. I'm inclined to agree with you, but I don't want to discredit how impressive Justin Herbert was as someone who was even quite skeptical of him when he came out of college and proved me completely wrong in his rookie year. Has kind of regressed year by year ever since then. Not like a massive regression, but the last time we saw him was against the Texans, and it was the worst game of his career. And now you're playing in Brazil against the boogeyman, the dynasty, the conquerors and of the AFC West, and he was absolutely incredible. Made every single throw, delivery responses every single time the Chiefs showed life. I also thought the pass protection was excellent, which helps. As a Notre Dame fan, it's great to see Joe Alt getting his flowers because he was absolutely like a rocket left tackle. But you'd be a fool to see this as a turning point in the division. It's obviously not a great sign for the Kansas City Chiefs, and I guess we'll come on to them because they definitely have some concerns. But until they lose the division, until I see it, I'm never going to bet against them. So I'm leaning towards an anomaly, but I don't think we should take away how impressive the Chargers and Justin Herbert were on Friday.
Yeah, I think in the day, week 1 doesn't win you Super Bowls, and I think that exactly what you're saying. Exactly why I put the Chiefs winning the AFC in my predictions, because I feel like until I see the likes of Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, or Joe Burrow, who has in the past, until I see the Chiefs dethroned, I can't bet against them, and I think that in a way, losing week 1 is only going to inspire them to to win more games. I think that's almost the wake up call they needed at the start of the season to sort of get focused and get right. And and I think again, I said before in our predictions episode, you've got a hungry Chief post losing a Super Bowl. I think they're going to be really eager to to make it what could be for Kelsey's last season, one final sort of show for the last dance, basically, for this Chiefs team. And Andy Reid is in that could he retire territory. So the age he's at and what he's done in his career, what more can he do? I think he may have even gone if they'd done the 3-peat. Kelsey, I think, definitely would have. But yeah, the Kelsey still showed what he can do, albeit in small parts. He was largely quiet for a lot of the game, and then out of nowhere, he catches for a touchdown. And I think that even could be the kind of what we see out of Kelsey, maybe a more limited role. And I think we could see him. I think that in a way will help him, do best, is because if you can limit him to not giving him 2/3 of the snaps, 2/3 of the receptions, but you can unleash him on these plays now and again when maybe the defense isn't scheming against him because he's been quiet, like against the Chargers on Friday night. I do think that could be where he could be most effective. But of course, that's going to be largely affected by the lack of receivers, and they could force him to throw to Kelsey more. Xavier Worthy went down in this game, and they're saying it's far more optimistic than initially feared. But you think about the Rashee Rice suspension as well. It may be forced into a corner into throwing the ball more to Kelsey. But again, Mahomes has won Super Bowl thrown to McCole Hardman, Juju Smith-Schuster, and Kadarius Toney. So Mahomes, I don't think should be too concerned about lack of receivers for the most part, because he has won playoff games, won Super Bowls with a far worse receiving core than a lot of teams who were in the playoffs each year. So how much does that concern you? Or are you not, like you said before, you're not too worried about this Chiefs team going into the season?
I'm more concerned than I ever have been at any point of the Reed Mahomes era, the receiver concerns are big. Like you said, in a year where you're not going to have Rashee Rice for the first 6 weeks. And what concerned me about Worthy is that it looked slightly innocuous, the injury, and it was a shoulder injury, and it was the third play of the game, and he didn't return. That's why I was like, okay, this is a concern. And now your threats are what? Hollywood Brown, a 35-year-old Kelsey. You traded away Sky Moore. It's just a thin group, and I also thought they just look sloppy. How many penalties did they give up in the first half? How many full starts do they have? I mean, the line's been a concern, it feels like, for maybe a year or two. It was just the uncharacteristic mistakes. Of course, there's some drops, which seem to be kind of endemic in the Chiefs receiver room. And I think what slightly concerned me as well is that a big part of this dynasty has been Spags in that defense, and that pass rush looked really poor out there. Now, I don't know. I'm a big fan of the Chargers' offensive line. They've put in a significant amount of draft capital in to make that a strength. But Chris Jones, even when he wasn't double teamed, still couldn't get anything going. Carl Loftus, Mike Dana, Charles Omenihu, it just didn't. There was just no juice up front, and that's what would also concern me as well. Is that if you look at teams around the league, if you look at someone like a Green Bay Packers, whose defensive line dominated the Lions, one of the most physical teams on both sides of the ball. It's a vital part of any defense, and I was slightly underwhelmed by the Chiefs' defensive line. But again, still early days. Count out Andy Reid and Steve Spagnuolo and Mahomes at your peril. But it did feel slightly different. But those are just my takeaways on the Chiefs side.
Yeah, I mean, the term Super Bowl hangover will, if they lose again in week 2, they're playing. They're playing the Eagles. God, if they could easily go 0-2, and even week 3 they are playing. Doesn't say they're playing week 3. It's got to be here somewhere. The Giants. Okay, so they could start the season 1-2 easily, and that defensive trio, or quartet the Giants have. You never know on any, especially early on in the season. You never know. The Chiefs could start 0-3. I don't think that'll happen. I think they'll go 1-2 or 2-1. But yeah, no concerns. Even if it was week 1 in a neutral venue. Moving on to to the 6 p.m. slate on the Sunday. The Buccaneers narrowly edged out the Falcons 23-20 with Younghoe Koo missing a field goal to tie it and take it to overtime. The Bengals narrowly beat the Browns 17-16, but with a kicker for the Browns, Austin Smith, missing 2 field goals that would have won the Browns the game. As well as this, the Jaguars beat the Panthers by 26 points to 10 in a weather-delayed game. And the Raiders, a new head coach, Pete Carroll, beat the Patriots and new head coach Mike Vrabel by 20 points to 13. And the Cardinals beat the Saints 20-13. And the Steelers won a thriller against the Jets, winning by 34 points to 32. And the Commanders beat the Giants by 21 points to 6. And then our 2 teams met in week 1 as the Colts beat the Dolphins by 33 points to 8. Oh my God!
Listeners, I had to give Andy a message because obviously we had our first interaction in the preview, and I think I was definitely more boyish than others about the Colts this year. Did I predict that? No. But I'll let you tee off, my friend, first on the Dolphins. I'll come on to the Colts after, but I'll let you rant a little bit. This could be cathartic.
Oh God, that was so bad. I mean, I was hopeful for the season. I thought we were getting a lot of stick, and I thought we could even go out and some surprise teams and maybe even make the playoff, like I said in the predictions. And I thought this would be one of the easier games. I thought it would be one of the more favourable games. You think about the game against the Saints came to mind. This one was one of the ones I earmarked as, okay, week 1, we'll get off to a good start, and who knows from there. But my God, was that a terrible performance. Absolutely shocking. The only things that I was positive about was the performance of Devon A-Chain and perhaps for most of the game, the run defense, because there was only 7 plays in the entire game where you had more than 10 yards rushing, and 4 of those came in one drive. So if you exclude that one drive you had in the game, the run defense was actually pretty good at stopping the Colts. But the pass defense was absolutely diabolical. I mean, there was Daniel Jones looked like Peyton Manning in this game, and that's, he broke some record. I think there's a record he set. It was the first quarterback.
First team since 1978 to score on every offensive possession.
There we are. That is that I was missing out. But yeah, there was just so many problems. There was the stat that came around as well that it was the fewest yards the fewest first half yards in any game we've had since 1991. It felt at times that we were calling the exact same plays on offense. There was the constant sort of slants up the middle of the field. There was a constant out routes and players not being in bounds. And once again, like it is every year since I've been a fan, the O-line just couldn't protect Tua. And Tua wasn't sort of absent from criticism. I thought he made some poor throws. There was the second of two interceptions was a really bad throw. But I think there was the first interception he made, so he had on him. There was sort of a misassignment from Devon A-Chain. There was a point. I think Nick Cross was the man who got to Tua in that play, and there was. I was looking at I was constantly pausing the replay to see what was happening in that O-line because it looked like you had one of your players was being double teamed by Austin Jackson and Keon Smith, and then Austin Jackson seemed to get lost and not know who he was marking, and then A-Chain completely missed his blocker, and that allowed him to get sacked. But it was just awful because I think week one, if we'd won that game, I'd have been, okay, fair enough, we won this game, wasn't expecting to lose. But now, losing this game, it just brings even more doubt into the season for me as a Dolphins fan, and I think that, for me, maybe was a game that maybe signalled the beginning of the end for McDaniel. I think we could keep him with the money we paid for him. We're probably going to keep him. But I think with McDaniel, I think kind of the way that offense was, and I'm hoping it's a one-off. I'm hoping it will give us that boost or the kick up the backside that we need. But I thought all round it was literally shocking. It was so bad, and there was very, very small amount of bright spots. I think the biggest bright spot was the game ending, to be honest with you. As a Colts fan, of course, you've got your win, 1-0. Obviously, good start for you guys. Your take on what I thought was a really good performance from the Colts, but also on a terrible performance from the Dolphins.
Yeah, I also think, above everything, the Colts historically have been horrendous on the first day of the season. I mean, that's the first time I've seen the Colts win on the first day of the season. They hadn't won a season opener since 2013. So I'd never, ever seen them win. But it was Jim Irsay Day. They opened the window. I just thought, there's no way the man upstairs is letting us lose today. And I was, I've been very buoyant about the Colts all offseason. I came on the podcast and was quite confident about them because I really do think it's one of the most underrated teams in the league. I think it's quite easy to forget about the Colts because it's not a particularly flashy team. They haven't won the division in 8 years, I believe it is. It's been 7 years now. I forgot off the top of my head. But the roster is just really well balanced, and the offense looked great. And when we spoke in the preview, I said all Daniel Jones needs to be is a floor level quarterback, not even on his kind of 2022, 23 path. He turned into Montana meets Brady meets everyone on Sunday. He was excellent, but he knows how to run the offense. It's a perfect scheme fit, and I thought the line held up really well. And then you have a really balanced receiving threat of a Pittman, a Warren, a Pierce, a Downs. You have Taylor and the Iowa running back Giddens, which they're looking forward to bringing in. I mean, it was better than I could have anticipated, but I honestly don't think that losing to the Colts will be a terrible shame this year. Now, they're not going to go and win 12 games, but I said on the podcast, I think a 9-8, 10-7 season is available, and obviously you're never going to play like that. I said as well, I think we'd win this game because I like the matchup against the Dolphins. I think if our line was good, we could get some push, and it could kind of allow us to do a lot of things. Steichen was in his bag, so it literally couldn't have gone better. I had my notes in front of me. I had no notes to say how I could have improved that Colts performance. So, long may it continue.
I'm just seeing on my phone now that per Tony Pauline, he said that Mike McDaniel and GM Chris Greer could be fired by Stephen Ross if results do not improve over the next 6 or 7 games. And looking at the next those next 6, 7 games, you've got the Patriots next at home. Okay, that could be a win. Then you got the Bills on the road. You got the Jets, who I thought really impressed in that Steelers game. The Panthers, you're probably going to win that game. Chargers, no chance based on week 1, and the Browns week 7. So I think the opening 7 weeks actually are. I think the Panthers and Browns, that's 2 wins there. But I think even if it's 2 and 4, even 3 and 3, I don't think that will help improve things. Chris Greer, I think, probably deserves to have more of a sort of what's a target on his head than Mike McDaniel, because Chris Greer's been there for 20 odd years, never won a playoff game. The last time he won a playoff game was way before I was a fan. I believe I was 4 or 5. It was in 2000. And he made the trade for Tyreek Hill and Terron Armstead, but there's not much he's done in my time being a fan that actually you can say that was really good for him, because we got 3 first-round picks in 2020, and we took Tua. Fair enough, he was a high prospect at that point. But Austin Jackson and Noah Igbenogany, particularly Igbenogany, really, really bad first-round pick. So, yeah, I wouldn't be shocked if we do see some firings before the season ends. I can see Tyreek Hill being traded. I think we'll see a lot of the. I think almost most of the team I wouldn't be against seeing go. I think you want to keep Waddle on A-Chain. You want to keep the likes of Chop Robinson, Zach Sealer, James.
The defensive line is stacked. I mean, Chubb, Phillips. I just think with the Dolphins, it just feels like Groundhog Day. It's just like I like Mike McDaniel as a play caller. But the offense feels slightly too gimmicky at times. There's just no toughness up front. The line has been a constant concern. They haven't hit on their draft picks. And as someone who, loved watching Tua in college, I just don't know if he's... I mean, Tua's at his best when he can be kind of that point guard where he can have good protection in front of him and get the ball out quickly, but it just, I don't know. I think the hammer will have to drop, and how Chris Greer has managed to stay in that job, I don't know how. I don't know how, because it's just the same problems every offseason that don't seem to be addressed. But again, it's great to overreact. It's still week 1. Anything can happen. This could be an anomaly, but I just think with the Dolphins, it just feels like the same old issues, rearing their ugly head again.
Yeah, and one of your players, Xavier Howard, of course, former Dolphin, will be playing this game, and he made some comments either today or yesterday saying that when Tua doesn't have his first read, he sort of crumbles. And listen, I've been a Tua critic pretty much since his rookie year. I've never been his biggest fan. I was a fan of him going into college, but it's a guy who watches very little college football. Maybe I wasn't the best person to judge it based on that, but we think about who was in that year. You think about if we tanked properly, we could have got Joe Burrow, who was one of my favorite quarterbacks to watch. Even Justin Herbert, a pick later. Now, I'm not saying they succeed in our system, because the O-line, the way it's been, is set up any quarterback to fail. I mean, no quarterback will succeed with how bad that O-line is. Maybe apart from Burrow, because he's made Super Bowls being sacked a lot by the O-line. But yeah, it just feels like it's been bad decision after bad decision. And for Tua, every sort of big game he plays, he's either not fit or doesn't perform well. You think about maybe the Ravens game when you came back in week 2 in 2022, or you think about there was a Bills game that same season in the snow where he performed really well, and even there was a Bills game last season. There's been a couple of games, big moments, but any sort of week 18 game, any sort of his one playoff game he had, week 17, week 16, if it's in the cold especially, he's not performed well. And I think you think about other quarterbacks like CJ Stroud, who can sort of make the teams win out of nothing. Even we'll go on to him later on, but JJ McCarthy put the Vikings on his head and got them a win on his debut. And Jaden Daniels is the same thing. Joe Burrow, obviously Allen, Mahomes, and Jackson are the same kind of quarterback. But I don't feel like you can win because of Tua. You win with him, and I think that's been his biggest issue throughout the whole of his time in the NFL. If he'd won a Super Bowl in that 2022 or 2023 season, it would have been down to Tyreek Hill, not him at all. So yeah, I'm not going to say anything more because I said enough about him over the years to say he's not the guy. But I don't know where you go from here, because unless we have a really bad season to get a number one overall pick, there's no real good quarterback you can get in free agency, as far as I'm aware. You can trade for someone, but yeah, at the moment with that contract he's had, no one's going to try and trade for him with that contract he's earning. And I think for now, unless we just cut ties and just take the hit and just cancel his contract, what else you do? Because I think whilst he is bad, I think there's definitely worse quarterbacks in the NFL. Yeah, it's going to be I think if you win next week, I think all will be forgotten. But if you lose again, and if you lose badly again to the Patriots, that will, I think, will raise even further alarms for the Dolphins and Tua.
Yeah, I think it's a make or break year for Greer, McDaniel, and like you said, Tua. I mean, I do slightly worry about that game next week. Is it in New England or is it in Miami?
No, Miami, thankfully. So that.
Okay, good. It's just, I don't know. I have these images of just tough hitting. I mean, they lost against the Raiders, don't get me wrong. And the Patriots are definitely a team where the preseason hype didn't quite manifest. But, it feels like a kind of a team that Miami could struggle against. Really tough, gritty team, a Vrabel team, tough along the lines. But yeah, one game in, sky isn't falling yet, but make or break. I mean, we're past that point. There has to be some sort of sustained success and something to motivate the fan base, which, Dolphin fans have been through a hell of a lot. Not only just the playoff droughts, but, some really poor teams. And I think it'd also be quite frustrating because it felt like in the last few years that you've been on the verge without kind of that real signature kind of win yet. But maybe that's what they need. Maybe that's what McDaniel needs, a fire in his ass, because they were absolutely shocking on Sunday. That was a pathetic performance, and it would concern me week one being that outmatched. I think talent wise, they're definitely better than that. So who knows? Just get Daniel Jones in free agency. He'll fix all your problems.
Yeah, get Coco Chains over to Miami.
Yeah.
Yeah, tough 14 years being a fan. I said it before, and I'll say it again. Eagles fans in that last season's playoff run have seen more playoff wins than I've seen playoff appearances from my team. Yeah. So good to show how bad it's been the last 20, 30 years. Moving on to the later slate on Sunday, the Broncos edged out the Titans and rookie Cam Ward by 20 points to 12. The Niners beat the Seahawks in a NFC West clash as they won by 17 points to 13. We mentioned it before, the Packers beat the Lions 27 to 13, and the Rams beat the Texans by 14 to 9. So our penultimate game we're going to talk about is Sunday Night Football, in arguably one of the best games I've ever watched. The Bills edged out the Ravens by 41 to 40. Bills overcoming a 15-point deficit in the fourth quarter to edge out as winners. Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen both putting on an absolute clinic, both not putting a lot of feet wrong. But then Derrick Henry, who was maybe one of the best players on the whole, maybe the best player on the field sometimes in this game, 169 yards, 2 touchdowns. But his fumble seemed to completely turn this game around, and the Bills ended up winning this game with a late kick from Matt Prater as time expired to win the Bills the first game in what will be their final season at Highmark Stadium. JP, what are your thoughts on what was just a crazy, crazy game?
Oh, unbelievable game. I mean, it's kind of, if we get a better Sunday Night Football game than that this year, we'll be very lucky. I'm kind of annoyed it's happened in the first week of the season. No, but excellent game between two, a rematch of a playoff game last year. I'll start with the Ravens because we talk about Groundhog Day. I mean, how many times are we going to see this from this Ravens team? Absolutely in control, leading by 15, and they turn the ball over and shoot themselves in the foot with mistakes. It's another game that they lost where they had absolutely no business losing. They had the Bills dead to rights. I've always thought John Harbaugh has been one of the best coaches of the last 15 years, Super Bowl winner. But the decision to punt on 4th and 2, I believe it was. I don't know if he was doing that to kind of inject some juice into his. I was listening to John Gruden on one of his Barstool shows, and I think he made the claim maybe Harbaugh was trying to kind of put some juice into his defense and kind of think, all right, no, you guys are going to be able to win the game. But when you have the offense of Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, who had been exceptional, when you also look over and see Josh Allen has hit that gear, that next level gear where no one can stop him, and you see that your defense has given up nearly 500 yards of offense, that was a wild call. Just very disappointing in the Ravens. Very uncharacteristic for the defense to be so poor. I mean, the secondary was horrendous. I mean, again, early in Jair Alexander's career, but the pass interference call that led to the touchdown, just a complete meltdown by the Ravens. And, it's going to be tough to take them seriously. Like, it's an abundance of talent. Roster-wise, I think they have the strongest in the AFC. Well, coming into the year, that's what I thought. The best rushing attack in the league with Henry and Jackson. But seriously, they have to stop losing games like this. It's becoming a real concern for me. And, but crazy game. What a game.
It genuinely is one of the best I've ever watched. I would say the best I've ever watched is Chiefs Bills, that divisional round game. I think
that whole weekend was insane as well.
That
day, incredible.
I think there was something like every game went to overtime, or every game was decided by a field goal or kick to win the game. That for me is the best playoffs ever in my time. In my 4 years as a fan, I can't think of many better playoffs. Maybe the year they had the Packers Cardinals and the Cardinals run to the Super Bowl, maybe there was that, but the whole Joe Burrow story, the Bengals, them beating the Chiefs, coming back, that was just an incredible, set of games in that season. But this game had, I think, I did an article on it today for the Touchdown about how it was such a perfect advertisement to get new NFL fans in the UK, because they've got a new show on Channel 5, more games than ever on Sky, more international games than ever. That game for me, I've been with some situations with friends where I'm trying to get them into the sport, and I put on a game and it's a really bad game. I remember I think it was Browns-Bengals week 1, 2023, where it was literally, I would say it was like 9-6 or 12-9 or something really bad, and someone trying to get into the sport, it was just really,
bad
advertisement.
Don't show people the Cleveland Browns if you're trying to get into it. That's like the first commandment, basically. And I love the Browns. They talk about tortured fan bases. They're probably number one, but do not show them that. That's torture even for us as fans of the bloody league.
But this game, however, was literally like the perfect advertisement for the league. You had that play from Lamar Jackson where he scrambled and escaped what was a seemingly nailed on sack, and then he made a first yard game. I think it was an 18-yard run, 19-yard run, something like that. Henry turning on, he had 6 yards second half, and then had a mammoth touchdown. There's a stiff arm from him earlier on in that game. Josh Allen's flip pass in the play that starts off in the end zone, and sort of how he sort of developed over time. Spencer Brown's blocking in that sort of battle between the trenches, and it was just a perfect game to advertise to fans. It was one of those ones where late nights for me, I can't do them, so I had to watch the first half on the bus to work, and then the second half on my lunch break. And I'm so glad I didn't look at my phone and check the scores, because I would have been gutted if that was the case. It was just all round. It was obviously probably not the best advertisement for defense, although Ed Oliver was probably the standout guy there. I thought he really impressed. But I thought overall, it was really impressive from Josh Allen. I mean, two teams that have notoriously struggled in big moments, particularly against the Chiefs. But I was really impressed with how Josh Allen just turned it on, and the atmosphere you felt there was deafening. And I feel like that was kind of game that shows maybe there's a bit of luck on the Bills side this season. You think about there was that one deflected pass. I think it was to Keon Coleman. There was also obviously the fumble that turned the game round. There just seemed like a lot of luck involved. I mean, at one point I was screaming at my phone going, why do they keep going for 2-point conversions? Get the 1 point. And it could have cost them with, how many times they missed a 2-point conversion. At one point they were 9 points down with, I think, 2 or 3 missed 2-point conversions. If they got those in, it would have been a 6-point game. And they could have led the game with a touchdown. Obviously, that didn't matter in the end because they won the game. But just felt like with it being the last season at Highmark, it's all kind of feeling like, matter of if, not when. Sorry, matter of when, not if they'll win a Super Bowl. It just seems they will win one at some point. It just feels like it could be that year. Destiny could be on their side, luck could be on their side, and Bills fans talked about on our season preview episode with the Bills how they won their last game ever at Highmark to be winning an AFC Championship game. I think those kind of moments where you get the luck, like the defective pass, like the fumble return, that could be looked back on as that kind of season where they have all the luck on their side and they finally go out and do it. For me, the Bills, I think with how Josh Allen performed in that moment, obviously week one's not divisional round, but I think the Bills have to be very excited about what could happen this season.
Yeah, I'll start with the good with Buffalo, and it's obviously Josh Allen. He was magnificent. One of the most memorable comebacks of recent years. To start 1-0 against the Baltimore Ravens at home is as good as it can get. Keon Coleman feels like a breakout game for him. I mean, he flashed at points last year, but I thought he was great. But I mean, up until almost the end, Baltimore completely, dominated that game, especially offensively. I agreed. Ed Oliver was a low high mark for the Bills defense. I've always loved him when he came out of Houston. High draft pick, hasn't really matched the hype, so I'm hoping it's going to be a real big breakout year for him. But 167 yards to Henry, just some comical defending. Cole Bishop, that stiff arm was hilarious. They had that one scramble by Lamar in the fourth quarter where it should have been a 20-yard sack on third and 10, and he got out of it, and it was like a 20-yard gain. The secondary, if it was bad for the Ravens, it was worse for the Bills. In fairness, I think injuries has played a part in that. Tre'Davious Wright is still recovering from a groin injury. Their first round pick, Max Harrison, is on IR, so it was like some 6th round rookie types out there. But the back end and Rapp and Bishop look pretty poor. I listen, you're never ever going to complain about starting 1-0, and you're never ever going to complain about a 15-point comeback like that. But it was still, slightly underwhelming, aside from Josh Allen's, heroics. And also, it's got to be said, it might be their last year at Highmark. Josh Allen wasn't very best pleased with a lot of those fans leaving right before the end, and he made it known in his post-match interview. So I was a little bit disappointed. Bills Mafia is supposed to be one of the best fan kind of groups we have in the NFL. So stay till the end. Otherwise, you're going to miss something like that. I loved all the videos of people complaining and ranting on Twitter. It's just like, that's why you got to stay till the end of the game, because you missed an all-timer.
I always remember there was a Tottenham fan who left the stadium against Ajax, and he did a tweet. He's like waving goodbye to the stadium, saying thanks for nothing or something like that. And then obviously moments later they go and win. And it was even Sky Sports always show this slow-mo of the back to Vincent Kompany when he scores that goal against Leicester.
Yeah, always, yeah.
And you can see in the background, it's very, very small, a very small glimpse, but you can see a fan, his back's away from the stage, he's walking, presumably to get a beer or to leave, and it's like slow-mo as the ball's creeping in, and you can see this guy moving further and further away from his seat, and it's I wonder how that guy feels, and the people that left the stadium on Sunday. I think as well, I think for the Bills, week one in terms of it is week one, but at the same time,
how can you leave week one? You've just had like 9 months without the sport. It's like you leave, and I understand if it was week 13 and you're 4-8, but to leave week one, it just doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know. Anyways, that's neither here nor there.
But the win could be crucial in terms of that AFC seeding. You think about Ravens are likely to win the AFC North. Bills are definitely going to win the AFC East, probably by the biggest margin out of all the divisions. But you think about Ravens and Chiefs. Ravens and Bills are going to be, probably the top two, if not two, the top 3 seeds, and it could come down to one game. And if the Bills have beaten the Ravens, that can make all the difference between having home advantage if they meet in the playoffs or not. So I think that win in week one could be really, really crucial. And it lived up absolutely to its billing. But final game, which was a surprisingly good game, as the Vikings took on the Bears on Monday Night Football. And it turned out the Vikings were victorious against the Bears by 27 points to 24. Vikings scoring over 20 points in the fourth quarter alone as JJ McCarthy on his NFL debut, his year-long delayed NFL debut, as he scored 3 touchdowns in the second half, 2 passing touchdowns and 1 rushing touchdown, which helped seal the game against Bears, who will kick themselves that they didn't win this game, because I thought in the first half, they were having the absolute better of the Vikings. I mean, Brian Flores, I love Brian Flores as a coach. Should still be our head coach, to be honest with you. He seemed quite conservative in terms of the sort of the normal blitzing package he offers. It was very much, I kept thinking, where's the blitz? I'm not seeing a blitz. And then second half comes around, they just completely turned and he just completely changed his game plan. And it showed. I mean, Caleb Williams was having so much joy in the first half in the pocket. I mean, they brought new O-linemen in and it seemed to pay dividends. He was having so much time to throw the ball. But then the more the game went on, the more not only did the Vikings defense turn up, but also JJ McCarthy. And he, was a guy that I was really high on going into the season. I felt like he's got that winner mentality and it showed. I mean, to go from 17-6 down to 27-17 up before eventually winning 27-24. Unbelievable performance from him, and what a debut to have. And Kevin O'Connell, once again, quarterback whisperer, gave Sam Darnold a career year, gave Josh Dobbs a brief insanity run. And Kirk Cousins had statistically his best year, arguably, as a Viking with O'Connell. O'Connell just makes quarterbacks play well, and I think he's in the perfect situation, playing under O'Connell, throwing to Aaron Jones, throwing to Jefferson, throwing to, when he's back from suspension, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson, Adam Thielen. He's been given all the luxuries in the world here, McCarthy. And I thought I was really impressed with how he performed, threading the needle to Jefferson for his first touchdown. He's seemed really comfortable in escaping the pocket and scrambling. It just, for me, I was really impressed with McCarthy's performance in this game.
Yeah, it's almost like the perfect. Those two teams are, textbook teach tape for how to set up a young quarterback with success. Of course, it is basically McCarthy's rookie year because he didn't play last year with a torn meniscus, but you have around him an offense which is designed for him to succeed in. A strong offensive line, weapons across all skill position players. You have a solid running game and a great offensive head coach. Compare that to Caleb Williams last year, who had one of the worst lines in the year, 69 sacks, I believe it was, they gave up. That was just kind of one kind of holistic kind of takeaway, I thought. I mean, like, I was looking at JJ McCarthy and I was like, God, I wish Caleb had this last year, because I'm a massive Caleb Williams fan. He's probably the best college quarterback I've seen, him or Joe Burrow, since I've been watching. But for the Vikings, it really was like a tale of two halves. It was that old cliche. The first half was disastrous. McCarthy looked flustered. As someone who watched McCarthy when he was at Michigan, that offense didn't ask him to throw the ball a whole lot because they were so dominant up front and they relied on, Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards in the running game, and that kind of took the Wolverines to their national championship. So I was never kind of sold on McCarthy. I mean, the traits were there, the arm was there, the speed was there. But the second half, he was just absolutely, it feels like he fed off the momentum. He really rose to the challenge. That read option play to run into the touchdown was beautiful. That's the athlete that they haven't had with like a Darnold or a Cousins. And I think the most telling thing was the scenes in the locker room after the game. The team loves him. Like, they were going bananas, and it's week one, and they looked pretty poor for the first half of that game. But you just feel like he's a leader on this team, already voted a captain, so it couldn't have gone better in terms of the ending. And Kevin O'Connell, man, I mean, the guy won 13 games with Sam Darnold, and I'm not trying to knock Sam Darnold. I wish him the best in Seattle, but he had been, an afterthought for the first 6 years of his NFL career. He is just an excellent coach, knows how to call an offense and knows how to develop quarterbacks. So, yeah, amazing for the Vikings, but the Bears. It's just painful at this point for them. I we'll come on to them, but yeah, for now, very impressed with McCarthy, and 1-0, can't complain.
Yeah, it was a real welcome to the NFL. So welcome to the Bears moment for Ben Johnson as a head coach. I mean, it's a team that always seems to find ways to lose, and that for me, I think, was his way of almost like an initiation. If you're going to be a Bears head coach, you have to have one of these collapses at some point, or some sort of agonising loss as a Bears head coach. But I think despite the loss, I think there's definitely reason to be positive. I thought, as I said before, I thought the O line was for the first half, especially, it's really good at protecting Caleb Williams. I mean, he had, you said before, 68 sacks. I mean, it was the third most in any single season in NFL history. It can't get any worse than that. And getting in, Joe Thuney and Jonah Jackson, I think, will only help him. And he himself had a really good rushing touchdown early on in the game. So I think there's definitely, there was the defense they had under the old Saints head coach. I forgot his name, but the defense at the time was really good, especially that first half. I think there is room to be positive. I don't think that's kind of performance that's going to make you think, okay, they're going to make the playoffs or even win Super Bowls. But I think certainly to see an improvement from last season, to see a gradual improvement to Caleb Williams, to the defense, everything else, I think that is personally will be almost like a playoff win in itself if they can go out and improve. So I think the Bears, all is not lost, but yeah, they can't keep performing, having collapses like that. Against a team that notoriously does collapse themselves. Them and the Chargers and the Falcons are seen as teams that have choked over their history. I mean, the Falcons 28-3, the Vikings have lost 4 Super Bowls. So I think, I don't think they should be too disheartened. I don't think it was I think it was an awful performance. I think it was just a really bad second half collapse. I think they got a chance to, improve things over the next 2 weeks. I think, Bears fans shouldn't be too annoyed.
I agree to an extent. There's a few things that would worry me, and just generally, I think the frustration is amplified because they've lost to, like you said, another perennial kind of bridesmaid and a rookie quarterback effectively in his first game, who showed the kind of moxie and spirit that you'd want in your quarterback. But I'll get on to Caleb Williams. First of all, the penalties that the Bears gave up were absolutely infuriating. And I'm not even a Bears fan. 12 penalties for 127 yards. Like, you are never, ever winning games in the National Football League with stats like that. The full starts on the offensive line, I agree with you. I think that unit's going to be a lot better. They spent big. And full starts. There's a ton of motion with that Ben Johnson offense. I think that stuff will come. But DPIs, I mean, it was just such a really poorly disciplined game on that front. The concern for me is, I think Caleb Williams at this point is just an inaccurate quarterback. And it's so weird because his accuracy was never an issue coming out of USC. His kind of main fault was that he relied too often on plays outside of structure and would try and make things work when they couldn't. But just too many errant passes in that second half. There were back-to-back passes for Odunze and Komet in the fourth quarter when they were trailing by 10 points that he has to make, and he overthrew them. I think the first half was fantastic, and again, that amplifies why you're angry as a Bears fan, because the first Bears quarterback since 1978 to start a season with 10 straight completions. That first drive where he hit 6 different receivers consecutively and ran it in was just like, wow, the Bears are here. But I think the Flores figured out at halftime, blitzed him a hell of a lot more. I checked after the game. He was blitzed on 30% of his dropbacks in the first half, and then that went up to 43.5% after halftime. So I think the game sped up for him. I don't know. It's just frustrating for Bears fans, and the offense seems to just kind of go off the rails towards the end. I'm with you. I think we've seen in that first quarter, especially, that there is an offense here. They have all the skill players, and they have a great coach in Ben Johnson. But this is a fan base that wants to win and wants to win now. And also losing on a Monday night sucks. You get to, it helps watching all that football weekend, but that taste kind of really lingers in the start of the working week. So I agree with you. I said the Bears were my dark horse team heading into the year. I believe in them a lot, but you've got to start winning some of these games, man. And I do think I'm starting to get a little bit worried about Caleb Williams. Nothing like too crazy big picture wise, but the accuracy issues and the ill discipline on penalties have to be cleaned up, because those two things are not conducive to success in the National Football League.
Yeah, losing on Monday Night Football when you've got then a shorter week as well, that's never a good feeling. But there we are. That is where we will end our week one review. First of all, JP, thank you for coming on.
No worries, Andy. Great to talk, mate.
Always good to talk to you. And yeah, I hope you all enjoyed the first week back. For those who are listening or watching, I hope you enjoyed the first week back of NFL. And we are going to be back later on this week for a week 2 preview with a potentially first-time guest on the show who is very well known in the UK NFL community. Otherwise, this has been the Across the Pod NFL podcast, our week 1 review, with, as ever, your host today, Andy Davis, with our guest today in JP McGrath. And we'll see you guys next time.